So here's the challenge with only operating in one model. And by the way, I like to liken this as well for us as individuals, where you get your sense of purpose. If you're so wrapped up in your job 100% of the time, if something goes wrong with your job, your life is destroyed. If you have no external interests beyond family or beyond work, and if something goes wrong in those areas, you're a mess. It's difficult for you to be successful in any way because your brand is weakened. Your soul, your heart, the core of who you are is weakened because you found the definition of those things in just one channel. And so it's sort of this portfolio diversification model. From a personal perspective, I encourage you to diversify your purpose portfolio, where you get your sense of value. Not only is that good for you, it opens up the opportunities for you to influence more lives and impact others. The same is true with a brand. If me, Cinnabon, as a bakery, if that's all we do, we have bakeries in malls and airports, guess what happened to us after 9/11? Imagine being a franchise partner that had just invested, paid the $30,000 franchise fee, spent $200,000 to build a bakery, put your life savings into it, capitalized enough to withstand maybe 2 years of losses, because that's about what the payback is, and then this happens. If Cinnabon at that time had not had some of the alternative revenue streams that came from licensing, we would not have had the ability to step up and support our new franchise partners who were struggling during that time. We wouldn't have been able to afford it. It wouldn't have been a matter of we didn't want to. It would have been a simple cut and dry financial matter of we could not have afforded to. We would have had to have said, look, we'll let you out of all of your obligations from our end, but the fact that you did a rolling personal guarantee on the lease, the other obligations that you have, this is part of the risk you take in opening a business. Any franchisor would have had to take that approach. But because we took a multi-channel approach, because we were connected to the community in different ways, not only were we more diversified in how we found our value, but because we got our value from multiple places, when one of those areas of our business or our life started to crumble, we could reach in and lift it up. We had the strength to lift it up. The same is true for individuals and for people, and it's absolutely true for brands and businesses. And again, you can do one business in one way all you want and be very successful. You just have a much higher exposure to risk because the world changes in such a volatile way. I tell our franchise partners all the time, if you don't get connected in your community beyond just the traffic that happens to walk by, you are at the mercy of economic winds. However, if you get invested in the local high schools, the local churches, you have fundraising activity, you get to know the people in your community, not only are you much less likely to be the one thing they cut out because they're going to see Joni, the manager at Cinnabon, not just cutting out a $4 sweet treat, but you will have those alternative revenue streams to support you when things change. So whether it's product licensing or engaging in social media, e-commerce, running your business in maybe a smaller format than you typically thought you wanted to, whatever the case, it is always worth it to at least entertain a varied venue, a varied delivery method, or a varied channel strategy. It is always worth it to explore it. Don't have to jump in right now, but man, you don't want to have to run and figure it out when you absolutely need it. And thank goodness Cinnabon had a much stronger infrastructure with multi-channel business when things got really bad in the venues where we do business. So here's what's funny. We're perceived as this cinnamon roll. I talk to people and they think all we have is one giant cinnamon roll. Just like that guy in the office used to look at me like that girl in the orange shorts. You are only what you always were. But what if you so badly want to evolve? It's always possible. And I think there are lessons in how Cinnabon is evolving that hopefully are relevant to you from a multi-channel perspective. This is where we're heading. Expanded product offerings, new look, evolution, drawing on the brand's equity into slightly expanded categories, not becoming someone we're not, drawing on our perception of quality and indulgence, that's the core, that's our heart, that's who we are, into delicious, decadent blended beverages, smaller sweet treats so you can still indulge, but indulge responsibly, And by the way, at a time, there was franchisees who said, we will never sell anything small. The Cinnabon Classic roll is what we are famous for. Why would we ever undercut that? And then you had the other pure financial franchisees who say, why would I sell something that's half the price? Why would I offer someone the opportunity to trade down? And the answer is because if you don't, you're going to have a growing veto vote, and they will buy zero. So you choose. Sell something half the portion, half the price, or sell zero. But someone in an organization, just like my mom, who looked around and said, what's the alternative? Someone in an organization has to be the dissenter, typically someone who becomes unpopular when pushing these initiatives, to say, look around, here is what's going to happen if we don't consider this. And that's exactly what happened with Cinnabon. So that's where we're headed, but remember our challenge. We're only in so many malls, we're only in so many airports. This could be in every Cinnabon around the world today, and most of you probably wouldn't know it. There'd be no way for me to tell you just through our venues. Then if you say, well, you could do television advertising, you could do radio advertising. Most developed cities have no more than 3 Cinnabon locations spread out. The cost per location of any material marketing spend would be completely unreasonable because of our lack of penetration. So there's all these challenges. And so remember, it's like going into the maze. You hit the wall. You just follow the wall until you find another crack or another path, and you go down it. So that's exactly what we do. So I like to look at those great brands that, of course, have all elements of that equation nailed down. They have all the time, all the money, all the connections, all the meaning in the world. So just like I looked at those smart people in business when I was a young emerging executive and said, what do they have that I don't? And if I can't, obviously I can't fast forward 20 years, so what do they know and what are they doing that I could find a way to either absorb and learn by going to the best and asking them questions? Or if I'm never going to be able to make up for that, I will never have the perspective of someone who's been on this planet twice the amount of time I have. There's no way. So I need to surround myself with people who do, and I need to really amp up those other 2 variables so I can make up for what I lack. And so for Cinnabon, this is what our equation looks like. For me, I came on board to Cinnabon a year and a half ago. Multiple years of same-store sales declines, net negative growth in the base business, a strong multi-channel business, but there wasn't a key strategy pulling them all together, and this was my evaluation. We have very little time to do what we need to do. We have very little resources to do what we need to do. We've got some strong connections. The brand is incredibly viral. We're fortunate. It's indulgent, it's visceral, people love talking about it, they have an emotional reaction when the name is mentioned or when they smell the aroma, so that's our gift. We've got the connection. So how do we leverage our community? How do we ask our community? How do we ask them online? How do we ask them in person? So for the first 60 days, I took over the company, went in and did nothing but work in the bakeries and talked to the guests who were already our fans, and then just started tweeting like mad online, searching Cinnabon conversations, asking people questions, connecting with people all over the world, being accessible to them, not just finding them, but being accessible to them. And this multi-channel approach, by the way, the benefit is not just having lots of tentacles into many different communities, it's having lots of streams of feedback coming back. It's such a gift when you can take a multi-channel approach personally or professionally in a successful and thoughtful way. And so for me, it was leverage the X factor. The X factor is the brand's equity. We were fortunate. You may not have that in the brand where you are. It might be a startup, and so the brand equity is in its infancy. But you've got a new capital investment, and so you've got some of those other resources, or you yourself have connections that you can build on to build your brand. And so when I evaluated the equation for Cinnabon, I had to do some of these things. I had to know what we lacked, I had to understand the approach, and I had to be willing to tweak the business model. Yes, we want to have more full Cinnabon bakeries out there, but there was something brewing within the company that had growing success. It actually had a very high growth rate, and that was Cinnabon Express. It was a tiny micro version of our bakery that went inside of someone else's food service operation. It was met with great resistance. The franchise partners that had invested the full amount, that had built these full bakeries are going, whoa, whoa, whoa. How can you let someone else spend less, sell less, serve less, and still carry our brand? Not fair, we oppose. How can you go put your ingredients, Cinnabon cinnamon, and by the way, we have a proprietary ingredient, so it helps with the multi-channel products. How can you go put your cinnamon in cinnamon rolls in the grocery stores? We are the real Cinnabon. We are the only Cinnabon cinnamon rolls. How can you do that? And the answer is not simple. But the first part of the answer is, what's the alternative? You have to remember that. It's all about what's the alternative. And so I spent day in and day out with franchise partners playing out the alternative for them. I explained the amount of cleanup that needed to be done in the system, the amount of capital that would be required to make the right decisions, to shut down underperforming bakeries, to go seek new franchisees that would do right by the brand, and to elevate those that were successful in the brand. There was no money tree sitting around to go do all of that. And by the way, I'm still owned by a private equity firm. Those investors would certainly like their return. And so I played out the next 3 to 5 years for them if we don't do these things. If we don't do these things, here's what it will mean for you, my lack of ability to evolve with you. And oh, by the way, the entire time we still have this access problem out there. And so I've got investors that are hearing and seeing people say, I want Cinnabon. And I have got everyone's back in this company, but if you don't support me in this, they're going to get someone in here who is not going to take quite as collaborative of an approach. So you can do this with me, or we can get someone else in here who's probably not going to be as interested in what you think. Those are the conversations that we had. So some were extremely difficult, extremely emotional. They still are today. But I know what is the right thing to do to build a global multi-channel brand. We will make mistakes. We will hit road bumps. We will screw it up because some of it is totally uncharted territory. But as long as we commit to these things, first, ongoing education and learning. When you are growing your personal brand or your company multi-channel in any way, you've got to have a solid commitment to ongoing education and learning. I mean literal, formal, possibly higher ed, for your team, for you, so there is a broadening mindset, a broader mind's eye to see the potential. It's really hard to talk about multi-channel strength when people don't understand Marketing 101. It's critical. The next piece is this no borders, no boundaries mindset, because when you drop those borders, you can see the potential and then give until it hurts. And I don't mean writing a check to every philanthropic organization. I mean putting a deposit in that relationship account, as many of us have heard, is important to do. So when I am asking people, I've got a doorbell ringing over here. When I am asking people to join me in this uncharted journey, if there is anything I can do for them along the way, anything, help raise $2,000 for their children's charity, give them a little bit of flexibility in an area where we might have been rigid before, anything I can do to earn cool points, to help them see with small wins that I've got their back, it is critical as you expand into these other areas. So ongoing education, no borders, no boundaries, and making sure that you give thoughtfully.